What if I told you that some men are psychologically allergic to success? Not failure, success. The closer they get to actually achieving their dreams, the more violently they self-sabotage. There's a 42-year-old man who has been engaged 4 times, but has never married. He started 11 businesses, each reaching the edge of profitability before he walked away. He's written 2 novels to 95% completion, then abandoned them. His therapist calls him brilliant. His last 3 girlfriends call him emotionally unavailable. His business partners call him unreliable. Carl Jung would call him something else entirely. Puer Aeternus. The eternal boy, a man trapped in a psychological pattern so insidious that he doesn't even know he's living it out. And here's what terrifies me. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you might recognize him. Not because you know him, but because you are him, or you're in love with him, or you're watching your son become who he is. And if your chest just tightened, if something inside you just whispered, "This might be about me," then you need to hear what comes next. Because understanding this pattern might be the difference between a life fully lived and a life spent waiting in the wings of your own potential. The Puer Aeternus isn't just about a man who refuses to grow up. That's the surface. What Carl Jung identified was an archetypal pattern woven into the masculine psyche, a way of being that keeps a man suspended between the magic of childhood and the weight of adult existence. The Puer often possesses remarkable intelligence, deep sensitivity, and genuine vision. What he lacks isn't capability, it's completion. He lives in perpetual becoming, addicted to potential while allergic to actualization. In Jungian psychology, archetypes are universal patterns that shape human experience. The Puer represents the divine child, the creative spark, the part of us that dreams without limits. But when this archetype dominates, it becomes a prison. He becomes unable to ground his energy, unable to stay when things get difficult, unable to transform ideas into reality. And our culture enables this. We worship potential and fetishize youth. Social media celebrates the announcement, not the dedication. To understand the Puer, you must understand what he's actually running from. On the surface, it looks like he's avoiding responsibility, avoiding commitment, avoiding the boring predictability of adult life. But underneath, there's a terror so profound that his entire personality has organized itself around escaping it. What the Puer fears is not commitment itself, but what commitment represents. To commit means to die, not literally, but symbolically. When you choose one path, you kill all the other versions of yourself that might have walked different roads. When you marry one person, you mourn the mystery of all the loves you'll never experience. When you dedicate yourself to one career, one city, one way of being, you're performing a kind of psychological funeral for all the other selves you might have been. For most people, this is a natural grief, a necessary sacrifice in exchange for depth and meaning. But for the Puer, this choice feels like annihilation. His identity isn't rooted in who he is, it's rooted in who he could be. He's not a person, he's a collection of possibilities. And the moment those possibilities collapse into a single reality, he experiences it as a kind of death. This is why he keeps life in what I call draft mode. Everything is temporary, experimental, not quite final. The relationship is intense but undefined. The project is exciting but incomplete. The plan is brilliant but always just about to launch. For the Puer, there's often a psychological stunting of emotional development. His nervous system never learned to tolerate the discomfort of delayed gratification, the boredom of building something slowly, the anxiety of staying when everything in him screams to flee. Now here's where it gets personal. Because the Puer doesn't announce himself with obvious dysfunction. He's not the guy sleeping on his friend's couch at 40. He's often successful, charismatic, impressive from the outside, but there's a pattern underneath. Watch for it. There's a specific feeling he gets when things start to work, when the relationship moves from exciting to stable, when the business moves from startup to operations. It's not boredom exactly, it's a tightening in the chest, a restlessness, a voice that whispers, "This isn't quite right," or "Maybe I'm settling." And instead of recognizing this as fear, he interprets it as intuition. He calls it trusting his gut, but really, he's running. Look at his browser right now. 17 tabs open, 12 of them are business ideas, online courses, productivity systems he'll never finish. Look at his conversations. He's been talking about the same novel, the same startup, the same big move for 3 years. But the skeptical look in people's eyes is getting harder to ignore. Look at his Sunday nights. They fill him with dread, not because he hates his job, but because Monday means facing the gap between who he pretends to be and what he's actually built. And here's the one that really stings. He can't tell anymore if he's depressed or just bored, if he's anxious or just avoiding it, if he needs therapy or just needs to finally do the thing. He started calling himself multi-passionate or a scanner because it sounds better than what he's terrified it actually means, that he can't commit to anything. That's the Puer. And if you just felt something shift in your stomach, keep watching. The Puer pattern almost always begins in childhood, emerging from 2 primary relational wounds that look completely opposite on the surface. Picture a boy, let's call him Daniel, 8 years old. His father left when he was 3. His mother pours everything into Daniel. Every scraped knee is a crisis. She tells him he's special, brilliant, destined for greatness. But she never lets him fail. When he struggles with homework, she does it for him. When he gets cut from the soccer team, she storms into the school. By age 15, Daniel has learned something dangerous. The world is too harsh for him, and he needs protection from it. This boy never learns to face resistance because someone always intervenes. The world becomes terrifying not because it's cruel, but because it's unfamiliar. He develops what attachment theory calls an anxious attachment style, constantly seeking validation while simultaneously fearing engulfment. As an adult, he seeks relationships that promise to take care of him while running when they demand reciprocity. The second pattern is emotional neglect. This is the boy whose emotional needs were consistently unmet. Maybe his parents were physically present but emotionally absent. Maybe there was trauma, addiction, or simply the grinding stress of survival. This boy learns early that the real world is cold and unresponsive, so he retreats into imagination. Fantasy becomes his refuge, the one place where he has control, where he's valued, where anything is possible. Both patterns create the same outcome. The boy never completes what developmental psychologists call individuation, the process of becoming a separate self with agency and responsibility. He never internalizes stable self-worth because his worth was always conditional. So he remains in psychological limbo, waiting for permission to exist that will never come from outside himself. Underneath the Puer's avoidance is tremendous pain. He's protecting a wound so deep that his entire personality is organized around keeping it hidden. The Puer's relationships follow a predictable trajectory. Meet Sarah. She matched with Alex on a dating app. On the first date, he was unlike anyone she'd met. He talked about philosophy, shared his poetry, looked at her like she was the only person in the universe. By week 3, he told her he loved her. By week 6, he was talking about moving in together. By week 8, something shifted. The messages slowed, he needed space. Week 12, read at 11:47 p.m. This is what psychologists call love bombing, though the Puer doesn't consciously manipulate. He genuinely feels the intensity he's projecting. In the beginning, he's all in. This is intoxicating, especially to people who've never felt so deeply seen. But here's what's actually happening. The Puer isn't falling in love with you. He's falling in love with the feeling of falling in love, with the rush of newness, with the temporary escape from his internal emptiness. You represent possibility, mystery, the promise of transformation. Then reality enters. You have needs, you want consistency, and something shifts. He becomes distant, He's busy. He needs space. The passion that burned so bright begins to flicker. What's happening is that you've transitioned from fantasy object to real person, and real people require real commitment. His nervous system starts sending panic signals. He feels trapped, even though you haven't asked for anything unreasonable. Either he leaves, usually with "I'm not ready," or he stays but becomes emotionally unavailable, physically present but psychologically absent. You're left confused because nothing obvious happened. He just faded. For partners of the Puer, this creates a particular kind of trauma. You blame yourself, but the truth is, he's not leaving you. He's leaving himself over and over, running from an intimacy he desperately wants but cannot tolerate. Eventually, if the Puer doesn't do the work, the fantasy collapses. Michael is 41. He's sitting in his studio apartment scrolling through Facebook, watching his college friends post about their kids, their promotions, their anniversary trips. 10 years ago, Michael had more potential than any of them. He was the one who was going to make it, the artist, the visionary. But today he's worked 6 different jobs, none lasting more than 18 months. He's been in 3 serious relationships, all ending the same way, with her asking for commitment and him feeling like the walls were closing in. And tonight, for the first time, Michael realizes something that terrifies him. Potential means nothing if you never actualize it. He's not young anymore, time isn't infinite, and he's spent it running. This is the psychological crisis every Puer eventually faces. The potential that once felt exciting now feels like a prison. He begins to feel haunted, not by what he did, but by what he didn't do, by all the half-finished gestures toward a life he never committed to building. His fear has cost him the very things he claimed to want. This is the moment of truth. He either doubles down, becoming cynical and bitter, or he finally turns inward and asks the question he's been avoiding his entire life. What am I so afraid of? And what would it cost to finally stop running? If the Puer chooses to stop running, he enters what Jung called the process of integration, and this is not a clean or comfortable journey. It requires descending into the parts of himself he's spent his entire life avoiding. This is where shadow work becomes essential. The shadow in Jungian terms is everything we've disowned about ourselves. For the Puer, the shadow contains everything he associates with limitation, ordinariness, dependence, need, and failure. The first step is recognizing the defenses. The Puer is a master of spiritual bypassing, using beautiful ideas about growth to avoid actually growing. He reads books about consciousness but doesn't do his dishes. He needs to see these patterns without judgment, to understand that his philosophizing has been a form of avoidance. Then comes the grief work, and this is crucial. He must grieve the childhood he didn't have, the years he lost to fantasy, the relationships he sabotaged, the dreams he abandoned out of fear. This grief cannot be intellectualized. It must be felt in the body, sometimes with the help of somatic therapies, like EMDR or somatic experiencing. Simultaneously, he needs to develop what's called in internal family systems therapy, the inner parent. This is the part of himself that can offer structure, containment, and compassionate discipline to his wild inner boy. Practically, this might mean working with a therapist trained in IFS or Jungian analysis, joining men's groups where vulnerability is normalized, or engaging in practices like daily meditation. One powerful practice is what I call commitment experiments. Start small. Commit to finishing one book before starting another. Commit to one morning routine for 30 days. Commit to showing up for one friend consistently. These aren't about the specific outcomes. They're about building the psychological muscle of staying, of tolerating the boredom and doubt that arise when the initial excitement fades. Each time you stay, you're rewiring your nervous system, teaching it that commitment doesn't equal death. Another essential practice is reality testing. The Puer lives so much in his head that he loses touch with objective reality. Start documenting. Write down what you say you'll do and what you actually do. Track the gap. This isn't about self-punishment. It's about bringing the unconscious into consciousness. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life and you will call it fate. Integration happens in phases. Phase 1 is what therapists call destabilization. This is when the Puer's defenses start to crumble and he feels worse before he feels better. His usual coping mechanisms stop working. He can't charm his way out. He can't escape into fantasy. He feels the full weight of his choices and it's overwhelming. This phase requires support, whether through therapy, community, or trusted friends. Phase 2 is the reconstruction. This is where he starts building new patterns slowly and imperfectly. He commits to therapy and shows up every week. He starts a project and pushes through the middle when it stops being exciting. He enters a relationship and doesn't run when intimacy brings up fear. This phase is marked by constant micro-failures and course corrections, but each time he chooses to stay, he's building new neural pathways. Phase 3 is integration and embodiment. The new patterns start to feel natural rather than forced. He's no longer constantly battling the urge to flee. He's developed what psychologists call earned secure attachment, a stable sense of self that can handle intimacy without losing boundaries. He's learned to channel his creative energy into sustained effort. The dreams don't disappear, but now they're grounded in discipline. The timeline varies. Some men move through these phases in 2 years with intensive therapy. Others take a decade. What matters isn't the speed, but the direction. Now here's what gives me hope. And I need you to really hear this because it's the truth that changes everything. Integration is not about killing the dreamer inside you. It's not about becoming responsible and boring and beige. It's not about trading your magic for a mortgage and watching your soul die in a cubicle. What integration means is this: your creativity, your sensitivity, your vision, your ability to see possibilities that others miss, all of that stays. But now, finally, you have the structure to bring those visions into form. You're still a dreamer, but now you're also a builder. You still feel deeply, but you've developed the capacity to stay present with your emotions rather than being swept away by them. Think of artists like David Bowie or innovators like Steve Jobs, men who maintained eternal youthfulness while simultaneously demonstrating fierce discipline and commitment to their craft. They never lost their ability to see the world with fresh eyes, but they married that vision to relentless execution. That's the integrated Puer, someone who can access childlike wonder without being childish, someone who can dream big while also showing up to the mundane tasks that make dreams real. This integration transforms relationships. He becomes capable of what psychologists call mature love, not the intoxicating merger of the honeymoon phase, but the steady, grounded choosing that characterizes real partnership. He can be playful and serious, vulnerable and strong, open and boundaried. He's no longer looking for someone to complete him because he's done the work of becoming whole. So if you recognize the Puer in yourself, understand this: you're not broken, you're incomplete, and incompleteness is not a permanent state. It's an invitation. The boy inside you doesn't need to be abandoned or killed. He needs to be integrated, to be given a role in your life rather than being allowed to run it. Your sensitivity, your imagination, your resistance to the mundane, these aren't flaws. They're gifts that have been distorted by fear. But here's what therapists won't tell you because it's too painful. You're not going to wake up one day and suddenly feel ready. Ready is a lie. Ready is what the Puer tells himself to justify waiting. The truth is, you will never feel ready. Not for commitment, not for fatherhood, not for building something real. Ready is not a destination you arrive at. It's a muscle you build by doing the thing you're terrified of. And every day you wait, that muscle atrophies. So here's what I need you to do. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now, choose one thing, one project, one relationship, one commitment, and stay with it for 30 days. Not forever, just 30 days. When the excitement fades, stay. When the doubt comes, stay. When every instinct tells you to run, stay. Document what happens, write it down, and then in 30 days, choose again. This is how you build the life you've been dreaming about. not through one grand transformation, but through 1,000 small decisions to stay when every fiber of your being wants to flee. Your soul is waiting for you to finally arrive, and the only question that matters now is this: will you answer?